Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. We've got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty league, PPR league, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Well, guys, as always, I'm your host, Marcus Vargas, and first and foremost, I want to say I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you guys are healthy, staying safe. I hope, you haven't run into any troubles with your toilet paper supply, and of course, your food supply, God forbid. Well, guys, today we got a packed show for you guys. We're going to be talking a lot of stuff. We're going to be talking Jameis Winston, some Cowboys, because I think I mentioned the Cowboys last episode and I didn't actually get around to them. We're going to be talking a lot about the draft today and some rumors, etc., etc. But before we get into the draft stuff, guys, I want to talk about some of the other stuff on the list for today. Get that all out of the way, and then we can just dive into the draft for most of the show. So, guys, the first thing I want to talk about today is Jameis Winston. And why I want to talk about him is because the longer he's become a free agent, the more, for some reason, my hope in him has kind of been restored or rejuvenating. When Tom Brady was first signed to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and there was not really, any interest being shown in him, I told you guys, this is looking kind of dire. I'm not liking this, and I really only wanted Jameis to be on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because I don't see a lot of teams taking a chance on a guy who threw 30 interceptions. Even though, 30 touchdowns, 5K yards, that's great and all. People tend to focus on the negative, if the negative is that glaring. So, I had my reservations about him, and I didn't think he would be anything more than a backup somewhere. However, I've been thinking about a certain landing spot and how that could be really, really interesting for Jameis Winston and the league. And, sorry guys. The biggest landing spot that I would actually really like for Jameis Winston, believe it or not, is the New England Patriots. And now I know that might not happen, right? But again, guys, it's Bill Belichick. It's very hard to tell what he's thinking or what he's going to do. The only thing, one thing we do know, though, is he does not like to pay or overpay players. We do know that. But, is it that far-fetched to think that Bill Belichick would take a chance on Jameis Winston and basically, work with him on trying to limit his turnovers and so that he could get that, the 30 TDs and the 5K yards, but maybe only 10 picks. I don't think that that's so far-fetched. I think the Patriots are the last team for Jameis Winston to go and compete for a starting position. I really don't see many other teams where they would want to take Jameis Winston on. These are teams that aren't drafting a quarterback that would take Jameis Winston on to compete for the starting spot. To me, there's really not any. And even though, Jameis's play style really doesn't match the philosophy that's been around in New England for a very, very long time, it could be a project for Bill Belichick. And I know I talked about Cam Newton going to the Patriots and him being that project as well, but I could also see Jameis Winston going over there and being, at least a healthier project because Cam Newton has that injury risk associated with him. So it's very interesting. It is sort of disappointing to see that Jameis Winston hasn't, landed anywhere. Him and Cam Newton are also still in limbo. It's very unfortunate. and it feels like at this point that those two are going to end up as backups. However, with that, I want to segue into talking about Cam Newton. Now, I want to think about Cam Newton because I was asked by someone the other day, would you rather have Cam Newton and Antonio Brown on your offense or and let Dak walk? And, I got to thinking about that, and it's a very, very interesting question, Could the Cowboys potentially pick up Cam Newton and not, if they cannot work out a deal with Dak Prescott? It's a very, very interesting scenario to think about, and I think that, honestly, if Dak Prescott is asking for a very out-of-bounds number, and it's just, way too much money, he's asking, if he's asking for, more than $40 million a year, and the Cowboys don't want to get that done, Cam Newton could possibly be a reliable option to replace Dak Prescott. Now, Dak Prescott, has clearly played better than Cam Newton in recent years, but, and I know that this is something that, a lot of people hang on, and every time you hear someone talk about Cam Newton, they bring up the fact that he was a former MVP, but it's something worth noting. I know it gets beat to the ground, and Cam Newton hasn't returned to that form in a while. However, we can blame that on the injuries. That is that's a worthy excuse. Also, hopefully, with Cam taking basically the whole season off last year, he's at 100%. He can come out and he can show what he's actually made of. I think that, paying Dak Prescott is not going to be worth it for Dallas in the long run if he's asking, for an outrageous number. The report that came out where they were offering, I think it was $33 million a year. I think that was fair. I thought that was a great number for him. And unfortunately, what happens is people, it's just like a follow the leader type thing, and everyone wants to leapfrog the last guy that got paid. However, that's a trend that it doesn't necessarily make any sense. You should get paid what your value is, not what someone before you, I don't know, it doesn't make any sense. You're getting paid for the value of someone else who got paid before you, not what your actual value is. We see it happen all the time. And also, unfortunately, in Dallas, it's not like I can sit here and say that Dallas is not going to pay Dak Prescott, because we saw with Ezekiel Elliott, they were hammering home, we're not going to be resetting the running back market. We're not, going to make Ezekiel Elliott the highest paid running back. And then, a week or two later, boom, Ezekiel Elliott is the highest paid running back. So it's just, the Cowboys tend to, have this hard stance and put up that wall. But I think Dak Prescott's seeing through it right now, and he knows the longer he waits, the more and more likely it is that Dallas caves and Jerry Jones pays him a necessary amount of money. Now, I would understand why they would do it, but they definitely shouldn't. I think taking that risk on someone like Cam Newton, maybe, okay, Antonio Brown would be very, very cheap, but that's if he ever makes it back into the league, is reinstated, and we don't know how many games he could possibly be suspended, so it's hard to speculate about that team adding Antonio Brown as a weapon. However, imagine, the Cowboys, it's been reported that they're interested in upgrading at the receiver position, they've reportedly, shown interest in 49ers wide receiver Marquise Goodwin, because the 49ers have voiced in public that they are shopping him. And so, could the Cowboys draft a wide receiver, not pay Dak Prescott, pick up Cam Newton? I think it's very, very plausible. And, of course, Dak Prescott, he's on the franchise tag, so he would at least have to play one more year. But maybe they work out a trade somewhere, a trade with a quarterback-needy team, So it is very, very interesting. But my take on it, no. I would rather have Dak Prescott in a normal situation at this point in time. However, if Dak Prescott is asking for over $40 million a year, give me Cam Newton. Take it. If you can guarantee me Cam Newton's going to play 16 games, I'll definitely take Cam Newton. The only issue is we can't guarantee that. So it's a tough spot that they're in. However, Dak Prescott has done nothing to help his case. He's done nothing to help his stock, basically, and all he's actually done is make it worse for him to get paid. However, him and his agent don't really care about that. They're not too interested in saving the Cowboys any money. So, of course, we'll just have to see how all of this unfolds. But right now, guys, it's screaming at least maybe a game or two holdout. I'm really not sure what they're going to do because Dak Prescott has basically said he won't be attending the virtual workouts if he doesn't have a deal done, which honestly is worse than, other guys who have done it in the past saying they're not going to attend the voluntary OTAs in person. And that's because, most guys don't want to do anything in person because they don't want to be injured. They don't want to risk any sort of injury before they get paid. However, in a virtual workout, you're just going to be sitting at home. These virtual OTAs are probably going to be, talking about schemes and game plans and terminology, things of that nature, things that you absolutely need, and things that won't risk you getting hurt and that won't affect your contract. So it's really not a good look for Dak. I think he shouldn't have taken this stance. I think the voluntary virtual OTAs was, that was just a give me. It was easy. It's so easy to do, easy to show you're at least still there for the team while taking your stance on the contract and, possibly talk about holding out after that. But this, to me, is just detrimental to him as well in case he does get paid and comes back and has missed some valuable information. So, it is what it is, guys. We see this happen all the time. It's been a trend recently. Players holding out. It happens every season, and it seems like it's happening more and more often now. But with that, guys, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about another player who's having some interesting relations with his with the brass of his franchise. So stay tuned, guys, and we'll be right back.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Alrighty, guys, welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. And if you were wondering who that player was that I was talking about, or it may have been very, very obvious, that player was Yannick Ngakoue. Guys, Yannick Ngakoue recently got into a Twitter explosion with the son of Shad Khan, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, guys, honestly, my take on it is, I respect Yannick Ngakoue sticking up for himself, right? I respect the fact that, as a man, he feels that he needs to stand up for himself and, show this side to him, because he's a player, he's not just going to shut up and play. I like that, sort of thing. However, this was very immature. This was actually a terrible look for Yannick Ngakoue, and it's really, he's making it more difficult on himself to get what he wants. Clearly, we all know that Yannick Ngakoue wants to be traded from the Jacksonville Jaguars, and there is no way that this guy plays for the Jacksonville Jaguars next season. However, the problem is if he doesn't, pull some sort of the compensation that Jacksonville wants, then they're not going to trade him, right? So, I want to go through actually some of these tweets that Tony Khan and Yannick Ngakoue were sending at each other, and they're pretty. It's kind of crazy to see because you don't really see, players do this that often, and I'm pretty sure Tony Khan is a co-owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, so you got a guy who co-owns the franchise you're playing for. and you're in a Twitter beef with him, so it really doesn't make any sense. So let's look at what both of these guys said to each other. So the Twitter exchange began because Ngakoue tweeted #FreeYan. I guess that's his name, Unique, or Free Yan, however you want to say it. And he also posted another tweet that said, "Tired of the back and forth at Jaguars. Let's get this bleep done." Then Ngakoue posts another tweet that says, "Stop hiding." And that's when Tony Khan responds and he says, "I'm not in hiding, sir. I'm in isolation getting ready for the draft. I've been pretty active on social media in isolation, but you wouldn't know that since you unfollowed me, parentheses, again." Now, I just want to stop here. You can already tell that this is going to be an immature argument. You know what I mean? I think Tony Khan right here, it's not a good look for him because as a professional, it doesn't really make sense. You're bringing up the fact that he unfollowed you. Just shows that you're preoccupied with him following you, unfollowing you, and letting that be known to the world. And to me, that's a little bit immature. The most mature thing to do here would have been to ignore Unique Ngakoue, but he fed into it, put some fuel on the fire, and Ngakoue fires back. He says, "Since you're feeling mighty today, let's both let the world in on the truth. We been had a discussion that the Chargers game was my last game, yet you tried to backdoor the situation without answering any of my camp's calls." SMH, which means shaking my head. For those of you that don't know, he says, "Shaking my head, you spoiled, bruh." Holding up people for no reason, and then puts a clown emoji after that. So it's pretty spicy at this point. And honestly, it's pretty sad because the Jaguars are basically an absolute mess with everything that's happening with Leonard Fournette and Unique Ngakoue. It just is unfortunate for them. Just to see, where they were in 2017, just a few years down the road. I don't think they would have thought that this would have been, that bad. They don't have AJ Bouye anymore. They don't have Jalen Ramsey anymore. And it's just not a good situation that they're in. So after Unique had that whole, since you're feeling that whole basically paragraph, Tony Khan responds with, "It's a new regime here, sir. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the contributions you made here. That said, tweeting insults at me won't get you traded any faster. Only good trade compensation would do that. Please redirect your efforts into a more productive outlet." So, basically, Unique Ngakoue did nothing but hurt his stock here. Honestly, I see why he did this, but it really just it didn't make any sense to me why he would start this. The #FreeYan, that was fine. I think going on with him saying "stop hiding" was a bit much, and honestly, Tony Khan responding to this was not a good look at all. Shows kind of where the brass, where their heads are at, and why the Jags are kind of a mess right now. Unique Ngakoue later tweeted also, "People are really tough on the internet. Kills me." And he also said, "To my new future team, whomever it may be, I can't wait to bring great discipline, integrity, and work ethic to that new city. Wherever I may land, you're going to get the hardest working defensive end in the league." And then he puts the checker flag emoji at the end of that. So trying to salvage some of the stock he might have destroyed with the little rant earlier. So it's kind of cringe, honestly, to see that because he kind of understands that him getting into that argument definitely did not help his image. But either way, guys, disappointing to see. The Jaguars have a ton of drama. They're a team that could have been very, very good. The defense fell apart. The pieces and keys are gone. And we'll see how they sort of revamp the team come draft day. Unfortunately, though, their glory days are well behind them from a couple years ago, and they're definitely restarting. But with that, I wanna talk about some teams that could possibly land Unique Ngakoue, as I believe he's going to be traded on one of the draft days, if not day number 1. Now, excuse me. Of course, some of these teams would have to make it work with the money, as Unique Ngakoue is seeking a big contract extension. But teams could definitely use his services, sorry. Now, the thing is, the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be looking for as much compensation as possible, and I think at this point in time, they're not going to be receiving what they're looking for, and Yannick Ngakoue is going to go to a team for maybe a second-round pick, maybe a second and a fourth, or a second and a third-round pick. If we look at what the Chiefs paid, I believe they sent a first and a third-round pick, and I think maybe even a second-round pick for this year, to the Seattle Seahawks for Frank Clark, who's the same age, is a great pass rusher. So you can kind of use that as a baseline for what the Jaguars might ask for Yannick Ngakoue. But with all this mess that's going on, people knowing that there's a ton of tension between them, they're most likely not going to offer up a first-round pick unless it's a team that's trying to take that angle like, hey, we're the only team that's going to give you a first-round pick, so just give them to us. The team I would like to see Yannick Ngakoue go to right now is the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, they just gave Carson Wentz that mega extension, and so, basically they're sort of hamstrung to Carson Wentz for a while with a ton of money and guarantees. But, having a borderline elite pass rusher on that line, they'll need that next to Fletcher Cox, because Derek Barnett, while, serviceable and definitely a solid player, is not, Yannick Ngakoue. I think the defense, they've done a good job bringing in Darius Slay, and I think bringing in a significant pass rusher and maybe focusing on the linebacker position in the draft would be very, very smart. Now, if Seattle doesn't get the deal done with Jadeveon Clowney, that's the other team that possibly could make a run for Yannick Ngakoue after losing Frank Clark, after possibly losing Jadeveon Clowney. I think at this point in time, Yannick Ngakoue would be a better investment than Jadeveon Clowney. Jadeveon Clowney's older. He had a down year. Definitely didn't live up to the hype. And I think Yannick Ngakoue is going to have that sort of hunger after leaving his old team, especially if he gets to play them again. I don't know if the Seattle Seahawks play the Jags next year, but I think the Eagles and the Seahawks would be two teams that I could definitely see Yannick Ngakoue, or them making a move for Yannick Ngakoue. They have the need. Of course, there's teams like the Dolphins who need pass rush and have a ton of cap space that could realistically make the move. But I would like to see him go to a team with a winning culture, a team that's won recently, just sort of like the Leonard Fournette case, or scenario. It's just these guys, they're tired of being on the teams that they're on because they're on teams that lose a ton. So they want to go to a team with a winning culture. And, I mean, it sounds kind of, it sucks, and it's sort of vain, but, they just want to be winning. And, I mean, can you blame them? So it is what it is. But with that, guys, we're going to take our short break. And when we get back, we're going to start talking about, the draft and potential rumors and potential trades I want to see, things like that. So when we get back, we'll move on to the new topics and all that good stuff. So stay tuned, guys. We'll be right back after this short break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info. Alrighty, guys, welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Alright, guys, the draft is almost upon us. It is 2 days away, finally. It feels like I've been waiting forever for this, even though it's going to be virtual and not the same. Just to have something sports-related going on TV that I can watch live is going to be great.
it feels like, the whole world is just so different right now, and it's something at least that has stayed the same. At least we can have it. No matter what happens, I'm just going to be glad that we can have the draft and it didn't have to be canceled, because that would have been very, very disappointing and upsetting. Now, I want to talk about, before we start talking about the actual draft itself and the certain players, I want to talk about some rumors that have been swirling around the league about some potential trades and deals and potential thoughts of the teams. Now, the first one I want to talk about is the Giants, because there was a report that came out recently that said the Giants are scouting Justin Herbert hard, showing immense interest in him and exhausting a lot of their time into video calling him and having interviews with him, etc., etc. Now, I don't know if I buy this. And the reason being, I feel like maybe this could be a potential ploy to have another team trade up to the Giants selection so that the Giants aren't taking that quarterback, and so that the Giants could get more draft compensation. But I really do not believe that the Giants are thinking about drafting another quarterback after drafting Daniel Jones. And I'm not saying just because of that, because we saw the Cardinals do it when they got a new coach. But the Giants have a terrible offensive line. So it doesn't matter what quarterback you're going to bring in, you need to protect him. And I think that that's what they're going to focus on in this draft. I think they're probably going to take a tackle at the number 4 slot. I believe they're at the number 4 slot, if I'm not mistaken. Now, if a team falls for this, though, it'll be great for them. They can move back a couple picks, get another pick in return. Their tackle's still probably going to be there, or one of the great tackles of the class are going to be there. People have them taking Tristan Wirfs, super athletic tackle, but we will see what happens. This rumor, guys, I'm not buying. So, yeah. On to the next one, and this, honestly, guys, is probably the biggest rumor swirling around this week, that the Kansas City Chiefs are interested in trading up for Henry Ruggs should he fall into the 20s. Now, this right here, definitely going to be something that I will be watching on the edge of my seat for during the draft. And now I have a lot of reasons for this. I want to dive kind of deep into this. Do I like the idea? From a fantasy point of view, maybe from, a fun to watch football point of view, sure. Would adding another sub 4.3 or a sub 4.4, sub 4.35 kind of guy help the team? Absolutely. I think it would be absolutely insane. It would for sure be the Legion of Zoom for years and years to come, because, the reason why I don't, sort of just shut down the idea of drafting a top wide receiver in this draft is because we have Tyreek Hill, we have Mecole Hardman, but I can almost guarantee you Sammy Watkins and Demarcus Robinson will not be on the Kansas City Chiefs after next season. I think, drafting one of these top wide receivers will be the bridge between this Super Bowl era and the years to come. And, when Sammy leaves, when Demarcus leaves, that rookie can take, the spot and sort of become a part of the top 3 with Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman, and possibly Henry Ruggs. That'd be absolutely insane and amazing for fantasy football, guys, if you're drafting Patrick Mahomes. I mean, if this team gets Henry Ruggs, then I'm definitely sticking by my Patrick Mahomes as the number 1 fantasy football quarterback. Not saying that Henry Ruggs is going to start immediately, but if they work him into the offense like they worked Mecole Hardman last season, they're going to be uncoverable. I mean, you think about it like this, guys. You got Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman, Henry Ruggs, and Travis Kelce on the field, and possibly also having Sammy Watkins, Demarcus Robinson mixing in any of those points. That's absolutely insane. So we'll have to see what happens. Now, the reason why I do not like this rumor, even though it would be big and splash and a good entertainment, is because the Chiefs don't need a wide receiver right at this second. The Chiefs need secondary help, and the Chiefs need a running back, and the Chiefs also have a need at the offensive line. Now, we picked up Mike Remmers in free agency, who's okay, definitely not a bad offensive lineman, but you do, want to draft highly talented offensive linemen because they will basically be stalwarts on your line for years and years and years, and it's a position that you don't have to worry about because linemen play for so long in the league. Now, I think if you told me that the Chiefs are either going to take someone like J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor at 32, or Henry Ruggs trading up to 21, I think I would rather have the running back at 32. And it's also because they're going to have to give up another draft pick. So we lose a pick to move up a few spots. It's going to be guaranteed at least 10 spots to get Henry Ruggs or another top wide receiver if they so choose. Also, we're going to have to trade to at least 20 because there is no way that the Philadelphia Eagles, if Henry Ruggs is one of the last wide receivers on the board there, if Justin Jefferson's gone, let's say, because I believe the Eagles would really love to have Justin Jefferson. If he's gone, they would not let Henry Ruggs slip. So it's going to take some significant draft compensation to move up that far to select Henry Ruggs, and I'm not sure if we should necessarily be doing that right now, as we have great wide receivers. We have such a need at running back because no one rushed over 500 yards last season. And I understand, clearly we don't need the running back. We won the Super Bowl without one. It would definitely not hurt. Also, a lot of people have us selecting a corner or a safety there, and I think bolstering the defense in any way we can, it's also going to be a great help. Now, if you're a fantasy owner of Patrick Mahomes, you definitely want them to take Henry Ruggs, but I don't see it happening. I really am not sure that would happen, but of course, crazy things happen during the draft. We'll have to wait and see. Some things that we don't even know are coming will happen, so we'll have to wait and see. Now, to move on, there's also been a report about the 49ers. Now, I've mentioned the 49ers earlier because they were talking about trading Marquise Goodwin. However, I don't believe that that's going to have significant fantasy football relevance, as Marquise Goodwin has had a lot of trouble with his health and hasn't been able to be a reliable starter for some time. I think he's only played one full 16-game season in several years in the NFL. Now, what I do want to talk about, though, is that the 49ers apparently have interest in trading for Evan Engram. Now, while this would be great for the 49ers to have two lethal tight ends, that's probably going to drop the fantasy value of both George Kittle and Evan Engram, because they're definitely going to be sharing touches just because of the sheer deep threat of Evan Engram. Honestly, he's a super quick tight end, basically kind of like a wide receiver, and will definitely take points away from George Kittle. Of course, we'll have to see if this happens, but the fact that they're saying this out loud and showing interest is something to monitor. Now, I do want to talk about the fact that the 49ers have lost several key pieces of that Super Bowl team, and I'm not sure that what they're doing is the smartest way to possibly go about making their way back to the Super Bowl. Now, they traded DeForest Buckner, who was a key piece of that defensive line. Definitely is helping Nick Bosa get pressure and D Ford, and now also a report has surfaced of them potentially wanting to trade D Ford. Now, he didn't play all games last season. He only has 6.5 sacks. But, sometimes just the familiarity of the team can really, really help. And they're not a team who needed a reboot. The Kansas City Chiefs, all everyone talked about last season was the Kansas City Chiefs needed defense. Their defense is horrible. Their defense is the reason they're not in the Super Bowl. Did anybody say that about the 49ers? The 49ers defense was absolutely outstanding. What hurt them was Jimmy Garoppolo making bad throws. But nobody's talking about trading Garoppolo and drafting a quarterback, so it doesn't really make any sense to me. They lost Emmanuel Sanders, and they're probably going to have to draft one of these top wide receivers to put next to Deebo Samuel because there's not really any other top receivers on that team. Now, to think about it, just to go back to the defense as well, it's not as if that they can just they can just draft and fill these positions. The 49ers have a huge gap between their first round picks and their next picks. They have 2 in the first round. I don't think they have another for several rounds, if I'm not mistaken. They definitely do not have a second round pick. They might not have a third round pick as well. So they're definitely going to be a team looking to trade their picks to get other selections in the draft. So, I'm not sure what the 49ers have in mind, but I think, ripping the, key pieces of the defense apart probably won't do them the best. And, I don't know. I think they're a candidate to be a team that has a Super Bowl hangover, kind of like the Falcons. Maybe because I said it last season that I felt that they were a year too early. I felt that they were so young, and by some miracle, that team was playing absolutely amazingly after having a horrible season without Jimmy Garoppolo, and they made it to a Super Bowl. So kudos to them, but I do think they were a year early. We'll have to see what happens after losing key pieces. I don't know if they can repeat with that defensive dominance. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, and not to mention Joe Staley is probably going to retire very, very soon. They're also going to need an offensive lineman. It's just they do have some very key needs that they don't have the draft picks to fix. So we'll see what happens. But with that, guys, we're going to take a short break. When we get back, we'll keep talking about the draft and all that good stuff. So we'll be right back after the break. Stay tuned, guys.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Right, we keep the train rolling, guys. Here we are back. Welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. All right, guys, I want to get into a sort of interesting segment where I'm just giving my opinion on something. NFL.com released a list of veterans who could possibly be traded on draft day. And I thought this was very interesting because there are some names on here that I might not have thought of. And I want to go through here and basically give you guys my opinion on these guys, whether or not I think they'll be traded for why or why not. So just to start off that list, guys, the list starts, and I'm pretty sure it's in alphabetical order. Oh, no, it's not. No, it's not. But the list starts off with Andy Dalton. Now, it says here, because the Bengals have been shopping him for months, he may be traded during the draft. However, I think that he could possibly be a backup. I'm not sure that any team really is in on Andy Dalton, because I feel like at this point in time they would have traded for him already. When we hear the name Andy Dalton, we're not scrambling to go watch the TV or anything like that. And honestly, Andy Dalton gets a lot more criticism than he deserves. He hasn't been on a good team for a while. And, of course, he had A.J. Green, but hasn't been much more than that. And I don't think he's as bad as people think of him. However, if he does get traded, he has a big cap hit. So, that he has a $17.7 million cap hit in 2020. That's also not going to be attractive for anyone. So I don't know if this trade is going to be done. If it will be done, it's going to be for low compensation. Now, the next QB they have here is Jacoby Brissett. Now, I don't know about this. The team fits that they have here are the Patriots and the Seahawks. But do the Patriots really want to take a chance on Jacoby Brissett again after letting him walk? I don't see that reunion happening. I'm not sure that the Seahawks are going to trade for Jacoby Brissett as their backup. I'm not really sure. Honestly, I think that, since Phillip Rivers is so old, you would want to keep Brissett as your backup just in case, let's say Phillip Rivers gets hurt. The older you are, the more likely you are to get injured. Or Phillip Rivers decides, hey, maybe he has a change of heart and he decides to hang him up early. You're going to want a serviceable backup to take that place unless you're planning on drafting a quarterback in next year's draft. Or possibly even this one. Who knows? But we shall see what happens. Honestly, this is another one I don't necessarily agree with. I don't think that they need to ship Jacoby Brissett. I understand that they, it's pretty clear that they don't want him to be their starter, but that doesn't mean they don't want him to be a serviceable backup for them. I know bringing in a guy who's I think he's 10 years, 11 years older than Jacoby Brissett. I know that's a clear message that they don't want you as a starter, but, that doesn't mean they don't want you on the team at all. Next guy on the list here, I 1,000% agree with, Leonard Fournette of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, this one is just because of the mess that the Jaguars franchise is, and because of, all the drama that's been surrounding players like Fournette and Yannick Ngakoue as well, who I mentioned I believe will be traded on draft day, and I don't believe he's on this list. We'll see as we go down the list, but Leonard Fournette for sure will be traded during draft day, and they have potential fits here as the Bills, Buccaneers, Dolphins, and Lions. Out of those teams, I'm going to say I like the Lions the most. The Lions have a desperate need for a running back, a bell cow kind of guy. I don't know how I believe, how I love the idea of Fournette in a Lions jersey. But that doesn't really matter, but I know it's something that people think about. You kind of picture, hey, can I see this guy in a Lions jersey? Or can I picture Tom Brady in a Buccaneers jersey? It's something that we all do, so. But the Lions for sure, and the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers, if they land Leonard Fournette, are going to be very, very scary because Leonard Fournette, he had an 1,100-yard season with the Jags. It was a great year for him, and it was very, very quiet because the Jags are a not too good team. But he had a ton of receptions last season as well. He really improved. A ton of receptions for him. He really improved in the receiving game, and that's going to be very, very big if you're going to a team with Tom Brady as quarterback, and that's going to be great for fantasy football. So yeah, keep an eye on where Leonard Fournette goes. I highly doubt he'll be a Jaguar by the time the draft is over. Next on the list here, they have Matt Breida. This one is interesting because, Matt Breida is not that big of a name in the NFL. However, he's in a super, super crowded running back room, and it makes sense for him to be traded. Apparently, Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman, and Jerick McKinnon also have cheaper deals than Matt Breida, so it really makes sense to let him go. You don't need 4 quality running backs on your team. Of course, it's great to have. Sure, if God forbid, all of them get injured, you have backups for each and every one. But potential fits here, Chiefs, Rams, and Steelers. I do like those potential fits. Like I've been saying all this time, the Chiefs definitely need a running back. The Steelers have James Conner. I believe they still have Jalen Samuels, so I don't know if they have that need for Matt Breida there. But, of course, that would help. And the Rams, for sure, need a running back after the loss of Todd Gurley. So, this next one here, not a guy many people pay attention to. Albert Wilson of the Miami Dolphins. Of course, that trade could happen because he's not, he's not the best receiver. Hasn't done much for the Miami Dolphins. Not that they do much anyway. I don't know the market out there for him. They have here the Eagles, Jets, and Vikings, but I don't even know if the Eagles should waste their time kicking the tires on Albert Wilson. We'll see what happens with him, but he's someone I wouldn't care to keep an eye on for fantasy's sake, at least. Now, this one here is going to be interesting. Alshon Jeffrey of the Philadelphia Eagles. So, the only interest that I think teams are going to have in Alshon Jeffrey is going to have to do with how good he was during the Eagles' Super Bowl run with Nick Foles. I've spoken about Alshon Jeffrey basically like he's not a part of the Eagles on the show here because I really don't believe that he will be for much, much longer, and I think this is highly likely to happen during the draft. Here they have potential fits the Bears, Colts, and Jets. However, he was already on the Bears. They didn't want him clearly, so I think Colts and Jets would be a good option. The Jets have a need at wide receiver as well, but people are also pegging them to draft one of the top receivers. So we'll see what happens here, but he does have a $15.4 million salary in 2020. he also doesn't have the best injury history. Another we're going to have to watch. We'll see what happens, but I do believe that Alshon Jeffrey is likely to be traded on draft day. Next one here, Corey Davis, guys. Now, Corey Davis basically is just a guy who didn't live up to the hype. But unfortunately for him, A.J. Brown came in, showing he has a lot of promise, and I think that, he's the top receiver in Tennessee now. Do I think he'll be traded? I'm not sure. I don't think he's going to have much stock in the trade market. Might be for lower round picks. So we'll see what happens. They have Eagles, Packers, and Patriots here as fits. I could see the Patriots trading for Corey Davis. They have desperate need of wide receiver. So we'll see what happens. Next one here, Curtis Samuel of the Carolina Panthers. Now, while it does mention they aren't actively shopping Samuel, they're reportedly prepared to listen to offers since adding Robbie Anderson, who's another speedster. I like this. I like this idea just because they don't necessarily have the need for Curtis Samuel. Potential fits Broncos, Eagles, and Redskins. I'd love to see him on the Eagles. They need that deep threat. Deshaun Jackson's very old, injury prone at this point. And so they could replace him with Curtis Samuel. Kenny Stills, Houston Texans. I don't like this one. I don't like this one because I felt the last season Kenny Stills did a good job becoming a playmaker and role player in that offense. And I think they're going to need him after losing DeAndre Hopkins. So keeping him, Brandon Cooks, and Randall Cobb is important. And I don't think that this would happen. I don't think it's wise. Now, Marvin Jones here. They have Marvin Jones Jr. of the Detroit Lions as a potential trade candidate during draft day. But I think the Lions need to keep their players together. I don't like them trading Marvin Jones here. Keeping him and Kenny Golladay I think is going to be important for Matt Stafford. They've done well together. And I don't like the idea of separating those guys. So I'm just going to skip right over that. Go to O.J. Howard. We know that he's most likely going to be traded. He was on the trade block already. Potential fits, I've already talked about him. Packers, Patriots, Redskins. I've actually mentioned all three of those teams, I believe. So we can just skip right over that one. Trent Williams, guys. I'm hoping that they trade him during draft day. I would love to see him on another team. I want to see him playing. He doesn't want to play for the Washington Redskins. He's made that clear. Just free the man. Potential fits Broncos, Browns, Buccaneers. Trent Williams is probably 100% going to be traded during draft day. And he's going to have a market there. The guy's a great offensive lineman. Another offensive lineman. We're in the offensive lineman section, I guess. Andrew Norwell, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Well, I mean, they've been dumping everybody else, so why not dump this one? It says here the Jags would probably kill to pass his remaining $45.5 million onto someone else, and that just might happen for teams like the Dolphins that need offensive linemen as a potential fit here. Lions and Redskins are also on here as potential fits. It's also, it's hard, when you look at offensive linemen, unless, they're big names, it's hard to predict if they're going to be traded or not. That's why this one coming up here, I believe, will be traded because he's a New England Patriot. And he will not be paid the money that he's expecting because Bill Belichick has say-so in the contract negotiations. Joe Thuney, he's never missed a game in his 4-year career, and he's fresh off his best season yet, earning All-Pro honors as New England's versatile left guard in 2019. That's what it says here. But apparently the Patriots aren't even close to a long-term deal. We know Bill Belichick's not going to pay him. I believe he for sure will be traded on draft day because they can get significant compensation for him. Potential fits here: Dolphins, Chiefs, Lions, Panthers, and Ravens. I really like the Ravens to be ones to trade for him because they just lost Marshall Yanda, and that's going to be a huge hole to fill. This list has Unique Ngakoue. We've already discussed that. And I want to just skip Anthony Harris here because I don't believe that he'll be traded, and I want to move on to Jamal Adams. He's the last guy on the list here. Huge name kind of guy. Now, the reason why I do believe that this could possibly happen is because it's pretty clear that the Jets aren't in a rush to pay Adams, and they already have had some tensions. I don't know if you guys remember, he was benched during a game for jumping off sides, being aggressive, and there was speculations then that he'd be traded. The season did not go well, clearly, as we saw. He seems like a guy who wants to be on a team with a winning culture. He's not interested in rebuilding a team, and I think here's the potential fits. Browns, Buccaneers, Cowboys, Dolphins, and Eagles would all kill. Any team would kill to have Jamal Adams. Cowboys, Eagles definitely have need. The Eagles would be one I would look at a lot to make this big move. Their GM is so aggressive, and I think the Eagles, after letting go Malcolm Jenkins, might have a plan for this. Of course, they could draft a safety, but if the Jets are taking calls of Jamal Adams, that would be an outstanding pickup for them, and it would be insane. So, that's the list, guys. We'll have to wait and see what happens. I'm not sure if all these are going to come true, but I do believe in the ones, clearly, that I said I believe in. So, with that, guys, let's take a break, and when we get back, we'll talk the draft, we'll wrap up the show, and then, you guys can have a wonderful night. So, we'll be right back, guys. Stay tuned. After the break, draft talk.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Now, guys, I was going to move on and begin talking about the draft. However, news just recently broke a few minutes ago that Rob Gronkowski has told the Patriots he is interested in coming out of retirement. However, he wants to reunite with Tom Brady on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, guys, this is huge news. At least for Tom Brady. For the Patriots, unfortunately, it's a year too late. Him joining the Patriots would be basically useless at this point. But Adam Schefter also has reported that the Patriots and Buccaneers have been discussing a trade for retired tight end Rob Gronkowski, per league sources. Gronkowski has 1 year and $10 million left on his contract, but the two sides are and have been talking prior to Thursday's draft. So, guys, this is huge. This could be, I don't know if there were rumblings about this prior, but this could be one of the reasons O.J. Howard is on the trade block. However, I don't just want to attribute it to that. But Rob Gronkowski on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers would be definitely scary. This is something you're definitely you're going to want to keep your eyes on, because the Patriots are probably going to take full advantage of this. If Rob Gronkowski I'm so excited I can't talk. Has genuinely expressed interest in coming back to the NFL to play with Tom Brady, the Patriots are going to jump on any opportunity they can to get compensation for him, because as far as they were concerned, a few days ago, he was retired and he would never play again. So, to see this happening right now, Gronkowski has taken a full year off. Hopefully, he's gotten his body right, at least a little better. Hasn't taken a bunch of abuse. I think he can come back and be very serviceable as a tight end, especially for fantasy football, guys. He's going to be a huge red zone target for that team. Him and Tom Brady have an amazing relationship, guys. Even when Gronkowski had fall, he was having so many problems with injuries and missed a bunch of games, falling off. He could still have amazing games for fantasy football, guys. So, if he joins the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, instant boost for Tom Brady's value, instant boost for his value at tight end. I think he's going to have to be in the conversation for one of those, tight end 2 with tight end 1 potential in fantasy football. So this is very exciting stuff, very, very interesting, because honestly, I did not believe that Rob Gronkowski would be playing football ever again. Because to be honest with you guys, I expected that if he came back, he would come back to play with the New England Patriots and Tom Brady and go for it one more time, with Brady, Edelman, et cetera, and just with Bill again, because they seem to have an okay relationship. Now, there is concern here. Gronkowski has had a lot of injury troubles. That's why he retired in the first place. He could come to Tampa Bay, and his body hasn't gotten any younger. Yes, he's rested. He hasn't played a full season, so he's missed out on a ton of contact. So he's not deteriorating as fast, but he's only gotten older. And he hasn't been playing football, so he's not in football shape. Of course, we'll have to see what happens here, but hey, we saw Jason Witten come out of retirement. Rob Gronkowski can most definitely do it. I just hope for him to stay healthy, because if he does, he's going to be a weapon on that squad. And that offense is going to be literally close your eyes and pick someone. They're going to get you fantasy points if that's the case. Especially, I talked about earlier, Leonard Fournette possibly being a target of the Buccaneers. That offense would be absolutely insane. So this is exciting stuff, guys. I had to report it right before I started talking about some draft day things, but it's something that's very, very interesting. Very glad it happened while I was talking here on the show. Super, super cool stuff. Now, since, it's actually a perfect segue, since I'm talking about the Patriots, guys, I want to talk about some potential things that I think could happen during draft, and let's just talk all things draft. So, Peter King, who's a respected writer, sports writer, has released his, he does like one mock draft a year, and the week of the draft, he released his draft, and he has some very interesting things going on his mock draft. Of course, guys, these are all guesses and mock drafts, it's what we think is going to happen, so you have to take every mock draft or idea you hear with a grain of salt. However, one thing I really wanted to talk about from his mock draft is he have the Patriots trading up to get Tua Tagovailoa at pick 13. Now, I want to talk about this because, remember, I had one of my wishes last episode was that a team would take advantage if the Dolphins decided to not draft Tua and they drafted a different quarterback or someone else, and Tua kept slipping. This would be perfect here. I think this would be the steal of the century. If Bill Belichick could pull this off and get Tua Tagovailoa and he stays healthy, it's going to be absolutely dynamite, and it's actually going to be perfect for what he's planning on doing with the Patriots post Tom Brady. He's going to get a new, young, talented quarterback, mold him into the quarterback he wants him to be, mold him into the quarterback of the future in New England, and win games and possibly go on to win another Super Bowl. So this was very, very interesting to me. I really, really like this idea. Of course, not sure if the Patriots would do it, but it's very, very interesting. And I think the Patriots drafting a quarterback, it's, while it's something that we think they should do, we don't think they're going to get a guy like Tua, right? So getting a guy like Tua would be absolutely huge. With all the talk about his injuries and the Dolphins passing on him, this is more and more likely. That's why when I saw it, I really liked the idea. Also, they'd be trading with the 49ers, who really want to trade, because I actually checked it for you guys. I fact-checked myself. They don't have a pick between rounds 2 and 4. So they're desperately needing to trade for picks, and they'd get significant compensation for that 13th pick. So this works out for both sides. It's a very, very interesting take, and I really, really like this one. This is one I would definitely love to see happen. He also cites Bill Belichick's relationship with Nick Saban as a reason he sees this trade going through. And it's just, honestly, the more and more I read it, the more and more I feel like, you know what? This just might happen on draft day. It'd be great for the Patriots. They need that right now. They need some electricity in that building, because I have a feeling, they start losing, man. It's not going to be good. They don't know what losing is like. That fan base doesn't know what losing is like. And I feel like they could turn fickle very, very quickly. So, with that, guys, we're going to go into our break, and when we get back, we'll wrap up the show, possibly with my wishes, but possibly with more draft talk. We'll see what I decide on. So we'll be right back, guys. Enjoy the break, and stay tuned.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Alrighty, guys, we are now in the last segment of today's episode. And before we get started with the wishes, guys, I want to tell you, recently, we were just talking about the Patriots possibly trading Rob Gronkowski, and the news has officially broken, pending the physical. The Patriots have traded Rob Gronkowski and a 7th-round pick to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for a 4th-round pick. So, guys, big news for Tom Brady. Gronkowski is back in the NFL. Very, very exciting stuff, especially if you were a fan of Gronkowski, even though, I'm a Patriots hater like everyone else. The guy is an absolute monster. He's a great player, and I hope he can stay healthy. I wouldn't want to see him come out of retirement and just get hurt again and realize that he made a mistake. But this is going to be very, very interesting. We'll analyze this later on for fantasy football and what that means. But, of course, you guys might have heard this already by the time you're hearing this episode. But the news just broke. Very exciting stuff. Cool to see Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski back together. All right, let's move on with our wishes for today. They're going to be all based on the draft that is happening very, very soon now. And here we go. So for wish number 1, my wish is that Jerry Jeudy is the first receiver selected in the NFL draft. Now, most of these wishes today, guys, you'll see are based mostly on just pure opinion. Of course, you can make the case for CeeDee Lamb to be the first receiver selected, and it's all based on teams, guys. It's very hard to tell what teams are going to do. Some team that's in love with Jerry Jeudy might trade up. I know people have had Jerry Jeudy being selected by the Las Vegas Raiders in the top 15, but who knows what could happen. I think, Jerry Jeudy's a little bit slept on. I mean, he has awesome moves, awesome wiggle. I mean, he jukes out defenders. He's nasty, and his route running is excellent, guys. And I think that's something that's very slept on. A lot of guys that watch football, they tend to like the guys that are just bigger, faster. But you have to remember that, the guys, some of the greats that really weren't that fast, people talk about Jerry Rice, the greatest of all time. It was about getting separation, not exactly just burning people down the field and mossing people. It's about how can you create ways to get a bunch of separation without being a burner, without being super, super fast or strong or big. So I think Jerry Jeudy has a lot of potential to be a long-time starter and franchise changer, and I'm very excited for him. But, of course, guys, like everyone's saying, this receiver class is absolutely stacked. We'll see what happens. I won't be disappointed. I'll just a little bit if he doesn't go first, but that's just my wish because I want to be right, of course. Everybody wants to be right? But that's wish number 1. Wish number 2, guys, is that the draft goes just fine without many technical difficulties. Now, I know it sounds like a silly wish, but there was a report that when they did their mock draft, they did like a test run of their virtual mock draft. There was problems from the very start with Cincinnati doing their first pick, and the reason I say this is just bigger than wanting no technical errors just for the sake of it. I think right now a lot of stuff has been going wrong in the world. This is just a stressful time. We all know, we've all been stuck in the house, and it's been really just not the best time. And I think something going right, just feeling like, we got to win for one. So, I'm just hoping for this whole draft to go smoothly and to hopefully, I hope that the NFL gets creative with what they can do. I know it's going to be tough. People are drafting from home. It's super silly, but I hope, they do the best that they can and make the best of the situation. There's a lot of great people working at the NFL that are going to make sure that this goes well. So I'm hoping nothing goes too wrong. Minor technical difficulties, that's expected. Someone's sound cuts out. They have to repeat what they say, or, maybe they don't cut, or the live stream is lagging. That's fine. It's expected. I'm just hoping that we get to at least watch the draft, that nothing goes too wrong to make it very, very bad. Otherwise, though, I'm very, very excited for this, guys. I'm really, really hoping that everything goes smoothly. And it sucks because Las Vegas would have been a great place to have the draft. You watch all the pre-draft and the fans in the streets, and we won't be getting that. So hopefully, they've come up with ideas to entertain us during this year's draft. So that's wish number 2, guys. I'm just wishing, it's not much to ask, just for the draft to go well, And for my last wish of the day, guys, before this draft, is for wherever Jordan Love ends up, that he sits out a year just like Patrick Mahomes did. Now, when drawing player comparisons, for the rookies during the draft, some people have likened Jordan Love to Patrick Mahomes because of his big play potential, his ability to scramble and make throws on the run, and just his potential wow factor. They also both didn't have the best supporting casts and are criticized for sometimes not taking care of the ball. So they're very similar in that regard. However, I believe, just like Patrick Mahomes, sitting out a year and learning from a quality veteran is really going to help Jordan Love find his own in the league. I don't think, a team should jump on him and just throw him out there into the fire immediately. I think a lot of teams can learn from what Andy Reid did in Kansas City, letting Patrick Mahomes sit out behind a quality, although two completely different styles, Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes sitting behind Alex Smith, I believe, allowed him to become the quarterback that he is. I feel like there wasn't as much pressure, as a rookie in the first year to turn a team around. Even though he did have that pressure, being in the league a year, he played a couple preseason games. He played the final game in Denver. Having some experience with the team, I believe that is invaluable, and it helps. Even though it seems little when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, that can really, really help a quarterback. So wherever Jordan Love ends up, and I do believe he's going to be drafted higher than people think, I believe that he needs to sit out a year. So wherever he lands, people have discussed maybe even the Saints trading up for Jordan Love. So we'll see. I mean, I think that'd be a great choice for them, him sitting behind Drew Brees. That'd be awesome. But of course, we'll see everything and see how this all pans out very, very soon when the draft begins, guys. So with that, guys, we're going to wrap up the show here. I want to thank you for listening and tuning in to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I want to ask that you follow us on all social media, guys, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at GSMC_F Football. Of course, guys, I hope you're staying safe, staying healthy. Oh, and I forgot to mention, be sure to leave a comment below. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. Keep it constructive and respectful, of course. And as always, guys, as I've been saying, stay safe, stay healthy, stay sane, and make sure you have toilet paper, guys. So with that, we'll see you soon after the draft. Have a good night, guys.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.